All right, I am so excited to be here today. This is the very first time that I'm actually getting to sit and reconnect with someone who I guess we have not, Annabelle, seen each other in over 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I was supposed to bring Moira when she was like a a month or 2 to one of the classes, and then we had a heinous snowstorm, so it did
Yeah.
never show up.
Yeah. And so this is just such a beautiful thing to get to reconnect. And no one else saw this, but when we first connected from on Zoom before your present day face showed up on video, it was this gorgeous picture of you and your 4-year-old daughter Moira. And so I've invited you here today. I invited a lot of people. I invited like a ton of people, but you were blessed me by being the one who's like, yes, I will do this. Come and just share some of your stories, some of your experiences as being a parent, because you are now a parent of a 4-year-old. And it's, I know some people can't quite imagine it if they're pregnant, waiting for their due date to come, or even if they have a teeny tiny newborn. But I hope that just sort of getting to experience some of what you have to share will be really encouraging, and also just that we'll get the chance to share some of your very favorite resources that have been helpful to you and fun for you as a parent in the Philadelphia area. So yeah, so let's just the facts that no one else knows, the little details of, when your daughter was born, where your daughter was born, where you live, what you do. Tell us a little bit of who you are and what your family is like.
So I am a teacher in the Philadelphia School District. My daughter was born in January 9th of 2017. Moira was born January 9th, 2017. It was, I had kind of one of those fluke births that, are not supposed to happen. My water broke first, and then but I felt super prepared. That's like one of the things that I really loved about the class is like, I felt super confident in just advocating for, I want to go home. I'm not going to stay here and wait for labor to come. I'm going to labor at home. And it was just a really wonderful birth experience. Just very, I felt very much in control and very calm, and I knew what I was going through. And it was just very beautiful to kind of welcome her into the world. And then I had a newborn, and then it was a lot of guessing and figuring out from there. One of the really great things that I gave birth at Pennsylvania Hospital, and one of the great things that they had at Pennsylvania Hospital was like a mommy class afterwards. They kind of group you all together based upon whatever month you gave birth, and that group was just so affirming. We still are in contact today with our 4-year-olds. Like there's 7 of us that are really really close, and just kind of are constantly reaching out to each other and just being like, is this normal? And
Yeah.
are you going crazy? So that was a really, especially right after giving birth, because just so many things change, right? And I don't know that I think there's no really real way to prepare for the shift that your personality or your sense of self takes
Yeah.
right after birth, of this like, oh, I am a mother now and this is my life. And it definitely took some like getting used to and getting a feel for, and kind of there's this like really sense of like love and exhilaration, but there's also this sense of loss that you kind of have to come to terms with, of this like sense of self that you're sort of losing. But I've also found ways of like making sure that that sense of self is preserved in just being very conscious of my own needs as a mother, and being very clear about like, I need to take a day and just be me,
Yeah.
and just making sure that I'm doing that. So those are kind of things that I've learned as I've gone. I have a wonderful, supportive husband, Chris. It took us a while to get also that relationship
Yeah.
um, after having a kid. Took us some time of like a lot of like really hard communications and honestly therapy to get to the point where we're like, okay, this is how we communicate with each other now that we're parents, and this is how we start to like like navigate those decisions and navigate, being in charge of a human being. So that's one thing that I would really, if you're, I'd say, like, don't be afraid of therapy. Therapy is your friend,
Mhm.
because it's not easy to navigate on your own and it can be really challenging. So,
Yeah.
but we now have this amazing 4-year old who's just so loving and so funny and so fun. So it's, not easy, but really amazing as we're going. So, yeah. I don't know what.
What neighborhood in Philly do you guys live in?
Oh, we're in South Philadelphia. So we are like probably a mile from the ballpark. The really great parks and things like that around us. One of the really one of our, top spots with Moira is the lily pad. They
Mhm.
have they've got an indoor play space, not, not really a play space right now, but they've had like classes there, and they do a lot of uh they do a consignment sale frequently throughout the year in partnership with Philly Kids Consignment. That's really useful because we've gotten tons of clothes and
Yeah.
toys from there with really, really cheap. So
Yeah.
it's a great like community to be a part of. Yeah.
And that's such a good point. I'm always curious because in some of the Facebook groups of pregnant people in Philadelphia, I encounter a lot of people. They're like, "Which stroller should I get?" And I'm registering for my baby shower. And there's a strong sense ahead of having a child actually in your life that you're like, "What do I need?" And or a strong sense of this is what I need, and this is what I need, and this is what I need. So I'm curious if there are things that when you actually became a parent that you were like, this was the best decision I ever made to purchase this, or some things that you thought after the fact, like, why did I think I needed this? I've never once used it. And I love that you pointed out consignment sales because I will say, like, that is the best way to get affordable. Like, you can get what you need, and babies don't tend to wear stuff out. And why pay full price for things when there are some incredible consignment sale opportunities all around Philadelphia? But let's talk
Oh,
about baby stuff and kid stuff.
yeah. So, when I was pregnant and looking, they were like, talking about strollers, for instance, they were like, you should have a stroller fleet. And I said, well, that sounds ridiculous. Why would I need a stroller fleet? Like, I'll have one stroller. But that's actually fairly accurate. It's very useful to have like your big Mondo stroller that you take everywhere, and, like, take on long walks and things like that. And then to just have your quick umbrella stroller that you can just pop out and go, especially in the city. So
Yeah.
that's definitely, and I found a really nice from the City Kids Consignment. I found like a nice like city elite or something like that, stroller for like $80, which was, allowed me to have that like leeway between strollers. And as Moira's grown up, we now go everywhere in a wagon because that's,
Mhm.
the easiest way to drag everything and the groceries.
Yeah.
um I In terms of like actual baby stuff, there were some, um I I feel like there's a lot of stuff you can get away without having. One of our lifesavers was a swing or having like a bouncy thing because that just gave us a little moment's peace
Yeah.
during the day. Having like one or two like baby carrying was like huge, especially when I was first, that allowed me to eat
Mhm.
eat lunch on
Yeah.
days because I
Yeah.
could hands free and actually stick something in my mouth. Um, we did not really use like the like, you know, bottle warmers. And I mean, I breastfed, so the bottle warmer was certainly not necessarily something that I needed much. But even when Moira started drinking bottles, bottle warmers, not so much. Like special tools for cleaning everything out was not really a huge thing that we needed. So all that like kind of extra stuff, if you have a good dishwasher, all that extra bottle washing stuff is not really necessary. And it's hard to say what other stuff. I know we have tons of stuff that we've purchased and then just never used, but it's been like pushed to the back of my head because I don't, yeah, I did never use it. So, but those are some of the big ones, like definitely having um, a, a solid, quick, cheap umbrella stroller and a decent big stroller,
Mhm.
and baby carrying, like anything that you can, just pick up your baby and go. So,
Yeah. And I think one thing that I'm often telling people is that, well, if you have family that lives in Philly or has like a urban lifestyle, they understand. But if you have family that want to give you gifts that don't really understand the constraints of most of us living in smaller homes in the city, they want to get you like the big Fisher Price play thing that takes up a whole third of your living room. And so
yeah.
for us, we had always, as often as possible, asked people in our lives that want to give gift to our kids, please like contribute towards a membership or an experience
hmm
or something we can do. Do you guys have any like very favorite memberships or experiences of the city?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point because like the majority of toys she never even touched, she would play with like a piece of paper and be happy.
Trash. They
So
love trash.
yeah, I know. Everything they're not supposed to love and put it in their mouth, that's what
Yeah.
they love.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have memberships to like most of the museums because it's very easy to they're usually not incredibly expensive for like one person or one adult to have. And they are a godsend when it comes to just being able to like I had a membership to the Philadelphia Art Museum when Moira was itty bitty because I could just take her and walk around there. And then as she's grown up, now she's starting to like run around and look at the art. They love the like the Knights display and
Yeah.
everything. And so that's been a big one. And the Franklin Institute was huge. That is out like one of our favorite places to go because there's just so much to do there. Those are big ones. But honestly, you don't even need to pay for a membership because there are so many awesome parks
Yeah.
throughout Philadelphia. Like Sister Cities Park is fantastic. There are parks scattered all over the in South Philadelphia. The Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the FDR Park is great. Lots of place to run around and lots of playgrounds and things. So I definitely have made a lot of use out of my museum memberships because I like looking at all the stuff, and Moira just loves running around and playing around there. But there are also tons of great parks scattered throughout the city that are really really fun. So
Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time that Philly only keeps getting better as far as being a family friendly place. It was when I first came here around 2000, it was, oh my goodness, we got to get all these college graduates to stick around. We need to have jobs that they stay here. And then it was like, all right, they stayed here. And, now finally, like the city evolved alongside with my lifestyle that there were very few indoor play places. There was like, not a lot of baby friendly, child friendly spaces. But for instance, like Frankfurt Hall in Fishtown, I feel like the
mhm.
children have taken over the beer garden because there's such a great sense of community where there's places that families can go and enjoy together where you can have, I think you sort of reference like where you have to find your new self, your new identity of if you used to love to just go to the beer garden without your kid. There's a
Yeah,
part of you
just
that gets
go.
to be like, "I'm still me, even though I'm me as a parent," when you get to do some of those things, and Philly really, I think, helps to facilitate that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I would say don't I was definitely I jumped right into that. Like we went to bars with Moira. Like they're very kids like when she was very very little. It's
Mhm.
a little bit more cumbersome now, but like when I feel like you have to do some things to maintain that former sense of self. Otherwise, it can kind of consume you. And there are so many places that I mean, like we would walk into restaurants and the waiters and waitresses. I would be so concerned about like her crying or my breastfeeding there or anything like that, but everyone is so open in Philadelphia and so willing to just like, give you the space. I had tons of waiters and waitresses that were just like, do you need water? Like, what can I do for you? Like, here's a space that if you want, like, you're welcome to do this here. There's also a space here if you want a little more privacy. Like, they're very accommodating. So I would say don't be afraid to just get out there and do what you love to do before you had kids because there are so many ways to do it with kids as well, and that helps you maintain your sense of self when it's kind of
Yeah,
wobbling in those first few
yeah.
months.
So what are your family's top 3 favorite places to grab a bite to eat that you've had good experiences as people with a child in tow?
So they're in our area around like Passyunk, there's kind of small places, but they're still very open to kids. I'm thinking like the burger place, Punk Burger, is very kid friendly and pretty open. We've gone to it's so it's been so long since I've been to a restaurant that it's kind of hard to
I know,
remember
yeah.
right now.
It's so different than it was a year ago. Yeah.
um yeah, I'll have to like think about it because there's definitely some that I'm like just completely blanking on right
Yeah.
now.
Well,
They
we'll give a
haven't.
shout out when we'll tag them whenever I post this. We'll tag them on the Instagram post for that, and then if you think of anything else, you can just jump in the comments, and maybe
Yeah,
some
that sounds
people will
great.
jump in the comments with some of their favorite places to eat that has been a good experience with their kids. This
Yeah,
is
that
I'm
sounds
gonna tell
great.
you what, where we would always run into all the other families. Maybe this is because we have 4 children, so sometimes it's just like I need to go somewhere where they can like do their thing
Run.
and
Yeah.
be with other children. IKEA is one of the best places
Oh, I
to go
know.
if you
I love
your
going to
family.
IKEA. Yeah. My one of my friends from church was like, you don't have to wait until they're old enough to go into the play space. They can just play with that stuff that's up at the top, where they have the displays of all the kids stuff. They can
Yeah,
play there. They're fine with
yeah.
that. Yeah.
They can stand at the windows and watch airplanes because the it's not far from the airport. I told my kids for a while that the big old boat that's like in the Delaware River there, I was like, that's the Titanic, right? They got the Titanic up just to see how long I could pull that off on them. But yeah, IKEA, we would inevitably anytime I did not want to cook dinner and we'd want to go get like a really affordable, low uh low maintenance sort of experience, and we would run into other families there inevitably that were doing the same thing, that people that we knew, so we would catch up with friends as well. So
Uh, oh
shout
yeah,
out
that's
IKEA.
definitely, yeah. And also in terms of like that being in that area kind of reminds me, and it's like a chain restaurant but also a really friendly chain restaurant, is the Miller's Ale House, and they are really good for kids as well. Their menu has like pictures on it, which was really helpful for
Right,
Moira. You don't realize how much like you explain a meal to a child and then it shows up and the 3-year-old's like, no, I don't want that at
right,
all. That's not what I asked for.
right, right.
So that was really helpful as well. And they're very, you can get a beer, you can sit down, and it's like
Mhm.
a little noisier, so you don't feel so, exposed for having children.
Yeah. So, oh man, I cannot wait till the days when we can just carefree breeze into a restaurant and catch up with friends, all those things all over
Hmm.
again.
Yeah.
Um, Well, there was one thing that we talked about that, at some point, I'm definitely going to have people that are, one of the things that people think about and their concerns are, you have a child, you add another child to the family, you're figuring out how to have like a toddler and a newborn. And that's a fairly common thing that people really openly talk about and give people advice about. But you have what is not a unique experience, but I think that is unique for someone to be willing to share openly about it. But you know exactly what I'm talking about. Would you share sort of what you have gone through as a family this year?
Yeah, so I got pregnant in November, and it was like a planned pregnancy. And then went for my standard ultrasound and found that there were, abnormalities with the fetus, and then went for a follow-up ultrasound, and I had a missed miscarriage, which is essentially the fetus has stopped growing. You've had a miscarriage, but your body hasn't recognized it yet.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of deal with it in a few ways of letting the miscarriage happen, or deal with it through medication or a medical procedure. So I ended up having a vacuum aspiration in at the beginning of January, which is just kind of one means of having the surgery. I chose that because I could do it within my practice. I was awake. I needed to be awake for it. And it ended up being a good experience on that side. Not a great experience having the miscarriage,
Yeah.
but was a very my practice was very like comforting. Very it was a they were full of women, and so very affirming as I was going through that. And I'm with the uh, University of Penn OBGYN and an AETM and Walnut, so that they did that procedure. And so it was very early on. I was, maybe 10 weeks. We had told my mother because and some of my family, just because I had been back and forth at the house, and it becomes pretty obvious when you're puking in a
Yeah.
in a bathroom every day. So I needed to tell them. I hadn't told many other people. And so we had not told Moira because I was waiting until it was very obvious. And you don't think about having the miscarriage, but you think about the miscarriage. And so it was like, I don't want to have to explain a miscarriage to a 4-year-old, which, ended up happening. Um, and so I think the best way I can describe dealing with the miscarriage is the same way that I've kind of had grief described before, of this, it kind of hits you in waves, in that the first one right after having it, I was having a lot of just like complete meltdowns. And I would say that this is one of those instances where it's really, for me, what really helped was being very communicative with Chris, my husband, and him just understanding sort of what I was going through. He was also going through things, but I think for a man, it's not as real until, I think you see this within regular pregnancies. Like, he was sad about it, but it wasn't real to him in the same way. And so he was able to sort of help me through my grieving process, mostly just because I had no patience for Moira. Like, I had found it very hard to parent during that time. So I really needed to lean on the people around me, so that I could kind of have space for grieving. So he was really supportive that way. And my mother and my sister and everything were very supportive as well, on that end. And so it's still something that I'm now in this place where I'm, starting to think about having kids again, and having that anxiety around now what happens. I really want to start having kids again, but there's that like low level anxiety of like, well, what is this? This could happen again, and I don't want to go through it again. But I'm, this kind of dichotomy of feeling
Yeah.
like I want kids now and I'm not ready to have kids, and then want to get pregnant now and I'm not ready. So that's kind of the space that I'm in now. I think what happened when I told my mother, and then I, reached out to a few friends, I realized pretty shortly after finding out that I had the miscarriage, that this was not something that I could just keep to myself, and I needed to talk to people about it. So I reached out to a few of my close girlfriends, and in doing so, found out, like, this is fairly common. I mean,
Right.
1 out of 4 people, and that's a lot of people in my life. And just being able to talk with other people who have gone through it, was really, really helpful, and made me feel like I wasn't so alone. I think it also, there's like no matter how much you kind of you know that it's not your fault, there is a sense of sort of guilt, but talking with other people about their experience alleviates a lot of that, or for me, has alleviated a lot of that sense of guilt. And just has given me, like, allowed me to do like a little morbid jokes, which is my way of coping, so that's been really helpful. um I'd say, like, for I needed to have a lot of patience with myself, and just recognize that, um just because I couldn't be the mom that I wanted to be with Moira right now didn't mean that I was a bad mom, and that, like, I am going through something, and that doesn't mean that I'm not, like, being the best mom that I can be. It just looks different from day
Yeah.
to day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's true even beyond this situation. This is a situation that like puts such a magnifying glass on how important your own self-care is as you go through
Hmm.
the process of grief. But you said, like, we have all these little points of grief just in becoming a parent with a healthy baby and a good birth experience, because there's parts of like your old self that die before this new there's this new creation that sort of resurrects out of it. And I'm so grateful that you have the vulnerability and the generosity to share this experience, because people need to hear that. People need to hear that, like, on the day that you could like feel like you're not being a great mom, it's actually you're being a great mom because you're doing what you need to do to take care of yourself, to make sure
Yeah.
that in the days following that you're there and present, and that it is so statistically so common that so many people have experienced pregnancy loss and having to make decisions about how to, like, in the aftermath. I'm really grateful that you shared that about decisions you had to make, because people sometimes just assume it's like miscarriage is something that just happens to you, but it's not. It's something that happens and you have to make choices.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, I mean, um it's definitely something that I was glad to have a very open and caring care team that would kind of walk me through those choices and be very clear about what those different options meant for me, so that I could make a very like clear choice. And they were very, heartfelt throughout the whole process, and very like kind of just let me make those decisions, and just were very caring and very open about it. So that was a really useful. I definitely am grateful to Penn's OBGYN practice, because it made the process less cumbersome and easier to deal with. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I love that. And I feel like you have something hopeful to, like, when you tell your story, you kind of like hear it in your own ears. And sometimes
Mhm.
we need to like hear our own stories to remember, like, to be as gentle with ourselves as we would be with a friend that we're telling this to. So I feel hopeful that there is a future of the additional baby or babies that you would like to welcome into your family. And I think that this baby was still is a part of your family story. And so I'm really grateful that you've opened up your family by sharing this story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I just I think to kind of like wrap up our time, I wonder if one of the questions I like to ask people before their babies arrive is, what is the kind of kookiest advice you were given, and maybe what is some of the best advice that you think that people they give advice that sounds kind of solid. Um, so maybe that would be our final question: is now, as you reflect back, can you think of like the kookiest, just makes you laugh or roll your eyes advice that anybody gave you about parenting along the way? And then actually something that is a piece of advice that you've ended up treasuring, that ended up being really helpful for you.
Well, I think I'll start with the one that was really helpful for me. My mother talks about when I was first born and I was in the hospital and I was screaming my head off. Um, and like my mom was on the verge of a breakdown. Her nurse came in and was like, "Okay, put her down, put her in the crib. Now, see, she's safe there. Nothing's going to happen. She can cry a little bit. You go and take a few breaths. You calm down. You take time for yourself." And that, I think, not even just from the perspective, like it's definitely was very helpful in the newborn phase, but I think that's kind of something I have carried into all of parenting.
Yeah.
Of you have to you cannot be a good parent if you are not taking care of yourself. And so if you need to step away from a minute for a minute, find a safe space for your child and step away, because
Yeah.
that's going to be the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your child.
Yeah.
Because that's basically, you don't realize you don't realize how real baby shaking is until you have the end.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I told you any of this in class, if any of this is like coming back that I like planted in somewhere, but step away is the exact phrase that I use, because we talk about in my postpartum class, we talk about the S's, the 5 S's of the happiest baby on the block, where we sucking and shushing and all these things that you do. And then I add a 6th S, and I say the 6th S is step away. Because if
Yes.
you did all the things and your baby can't stop crying, It's not bad people who shake babies.
Yeah.
It's push to the end of themselves people. And so put your baby in a safe place, scream in a pillow, go in the bathroom and turn the fan on and the water on so you actually can't hear it for a moment. Take those breaths and yeah, and do it when they're 3.
Yeah.
Do it when they're, I mean, 12. I got the almost 12-year-old. So that's an excellent, excellent piece of advice. I'm glad you had your mom affirming that to you ahead of time.
Yeah.
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 Any kooky advice?
Well, I don't know that I can think of any specific kooky advice, but I think one of the things is just like anybody that tells you there's a certain way you have to do things is just not,
Yeah.
just ignore it.
Yeah.
Like I mean, anybody that's telling you that you're crazy, that like you need to shush your child when you're in a store, or like you're not parenting the right way. I feel like there is definitely this sense of like you have to be this perfect mother right now, and there's just like there's no such thing as the perfect mother. It's whatever works best for you and your family. So
Yeah.
kind of trust your instincts that way. You're like you love your child, you care for your child, you're going to do what's best for them. And what I mean, follow the guidelines of your pediatrician, but anybody else, they're working with their life and not yours,
Yeah.
so just do what you need to do.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I love it. No wonder you're killing it as a parent. These are
Well,
such
we'll see. She may
smart.
have years of therapy later, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
but it's good. And I so appreciate with you sharing this thing, it means someone else who's listening and maybe they're watching this while they're still pregnant or they are like in the glassy eyed, like newborn phase. And somehow stumble upon this, that these are beacons of hope that you're offering of practical ways to sort of look at and approach life, and also just a sense of like look at somebody who's making it and not making it because they're doing it perfectly, but making it because we figure out good enough plus our instincts, we tend to be able to raise decent humans. So
Yeah.
yeah.
People have been doing it for ages. They
Yes.
will live. They will be okay. So,
Well, this has been delightful. I'm so glad that I got to catch up with you. I'm so glad that other people are going to get to peek in on this conversation. And we'll add some tags for some of those resources. Oh, the one specific question is, do you know, is there a name or an organization that organized that new parent group that you did through Pensy?
I am not sure about the name of the organization. I'm sure I can go back into my emails and find it and send that over to you. I just know if it was like basically if you're giving birth in the Pennsylvania hospital, it's like one of the bajillion forms that you fill out right after
Okay.
giving birth.
Was it possibly Hall Mercer?
Yes, that's
Okay,
exactly it. It was
perfect.
Hall Mercer. Yes.
I hear I hear all the time how amazing they are, and people don't realize like this is something you can plug into, and your cohort like follows through all these developmental stages. So good. We will directly tag like a link to where people can go find out more about Hall Mercer, because you are not the first. You will not be the last to sing their praises.
Yeah. It's just vital to have like some good mom and parent friends that you can touch base with, because I think that's one of the other things that was very challenging when we first had a kid, is like most of our friends did not have kids, and so it was definitely a shift also in terms of like who we could talk to about this stuff. So that was a just a very affirming and social group that was absolutely necessary.
Good. Well, we will hopefully get even more people sent their way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with
Yeah,
everybody.
of course.
And hopefully we'll get one of those, that gorgeous picture I made reference to of you and Moira. If we can
Yeah.
put it up on the blog post that goes along with this, so everybody can see a
Yeah,
gorgeous,
that sounds
gorgeous
great.
mom and gorgeous girl. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.